All right, welcome back to damn it. And welcome back to no.
All right, people, let's do this one last time.
Welcome back to another episode of A Stark Contrast.
Woo!
We are back for episode 2.
Episode 2.
Dai and I are just very, what's the word? Enthralled
Would be a word for it.
On the receptiveness that episode 1 got.
Yes.
I'm just pulling out all my words.
Thank you very much to everyone who listened to the first episode of The Invincible Iron Man. All of the feedback that we received personally was just so welcoming and so positive and so supportive that it's honestly just kind of blowing our minds. It's exceptional.
I was getting texts from Dai almost for the next week after we launched the first episode, saying all the screenshots of everyone that is listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it's getting good feedback. And I'm like, well, this is good.
Yeah, it's great.
This is very good.
Yeah.
I'm glad people liked it because
Yeah.
it's literally just us bantering around.
Nerding out. Well, yeah, it's I hate kind of pushing stuff on people when it comes, especially when it's something like this. I don't want to be so what'd you think? Hey, did you listen? I'm never going to be that person.
Yeah, same.
And so hearing people kind of provide their opinions willingly, on the fly, just oh, by the way, listen to the pod. It's great. And I'm just oh my gosh, guys.
I know. Yeah, same. Where people were like, oh my God, you have a podcast? And I was yeah, if you want to listen to it, oh my, I'll listen to it. And I was just cool.
That's so cool.
Because I'm not one to I'll promote, but I'll do it in just a regular way. I'm not trying to
exactly.
I'm not trying to throw it down people's throats or anything.
No, for sure. I mean, because 2020 was a bingo card of random stuff. You were either baking bread or you were making a podcast.
Yep.
And we were kind of late to that game, but I think all things considered, we're coming in pretty well. So hey.
So thank you to anyone who has subscribed or is following and liked our first episode. We will only be continuing to do more. Whatever characters you guys want to hear, let us know. What shows and or movies you want to hear.
We'll get down to that and that selection process eventually. Yes. But today's character subject, this is a personal favorite of mine.
I know. This might be a 2-hour long podcast.
He keeps joking with me
hours.
this is going to be a 3-parter and each part's going to be 7 hours long. But I promise you, I'm going to keep it down to as short as possible.
2 hours per Peter Parker that we have live action.
That's a lot of Peter Parkers.
It is.
It's a lot of Peter Parkers.
But as you know, if you haven't figured out, the character we will be discussing today is none other than Peter Parker, Spider-Man himself. And we have all been lucky to have been blessed by 3 different versions of a live-action Peter Parker. So best believe we will be discussing all 3 and comparing them to the comics and just the 3 of them on their own and how each actor played Peter Parker themselves.
Yeah. And how that, of course, compares to the comic book version and the many of them that exist. But, first and foremost, as always, just worth noting, again, we are not experts. We don't claim to be. Like our trailer and our previous episodes are going to suggest, we're just a couple of fans that are nerding out and having these discussions. And so, we're just kind of working on our personal knowledge of both the MCU as well as comic books and everything in that periphery. And, with these discussions, we're just hoping to kind of enlighten fans one way or another. So please, yes, enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, before we get too deep into it, I just wanted to shout out to our amazing graphic designer artist who created the logo for this podcast and a variant of it, Mr. Cody Guerrero.
Yes,
So
sir.
props to him. I apologize we didn't shout you out the first 2 times, but I promise we love you. And we have these awesome stickers for Patreons that are a circular decal of Cody's awesome design. And of course, you can find him on social.
Yes. Yeah. First, thank you, Cody. He's a really good friend of mine. I've known him since high school. And I'm very happy how it came out. Throwing this project on him.
Yeah.
And he took it tenfold, out of the, more than what we could imagine. But yes, follow him at Decodes. It is DE period CODES on Instagram.
Yep. And so if you're paying attention, depending on the platform that you're listening to us on, you'll see that there are different variants for episodes. And so the primary logo is the black and the white with the red mic. And then we had a special color variation of that for the trailer. And even for episode 1, we had an Iron Man themed logo. And so for this one, if everything went well, you'll see a webbed red, white, and blue Spider-Man themed avatar. So that's pretty awesome. And Cody kind of threw that in there because he's a Marvel fan as well. So thank you, Cody.
Shout outs to him. And before we even dive even deeper, we want to thank our patrons on Patreon. Dai, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah. We thought with episode 1, having 3 was, tremendous, which it really is. But, we're happy to say that we're up to 8 Patreons now, which is incredible. Thank you so much. We're 2 episodes in. And so thank you this episode to Andrew, the Marvelous Podcast, Ashley, Andrea, and Melanie. Thank you. If you haven't already, you'll get your stickers in the mail and you'll get your shout outs on social and all that good stuff.
Still more than I would have thought we've ever had. So,
Thank you very much. Oh, it's so cool, Okay. So what I kind of love about recording today, there's a couple of reasons. The obvious one is that it's Spider-Man. I love Peter Parker. If Peter Parker were a real person, I'd be like, be my boo. But honestly, today's episode lands on a special day because May 2nd, we're recording on May 2nd. Today is not only the 13-year anniversary of the first Iron Man movie, but it is also the 7th anniversary of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Which, Geoffrey, I don't think you've even watched yet.
I haven't. Oh my God.
Feel the judgment, my friend.
I know.
The judgment.
So bad. It's so bad. I was like, I need to find some time this week, but I just did not have time.
It happens.
Work was crazy this week.
Yeah.
But I saw the first one, and I know, compared to the second one, I know people love the first one more.
Yeah.
But I have a good sense of Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, but we'll get into that discussion of each character and actor that played Peter Parker.
Yeah. So 7 years, and it's also worth noting that May 3rd is my father's birthday, the George Stacy to my Gwen Stacy, and the funny thing with that is that my father, he's generally overseas half the year, and so he tends to watch these movies while he's at home, over in the Philippines.
Nice.
And so he would always text me. I'd be like, happy birthday, Dad. And, in the last 20 years, there's always a Spider-Man movie almost at the same time every release. It's always a May release.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's always that spring, summer release
always
date.
Going into summer movie.
Yeah, and so, I'd be like, okay, I can't wait to see Spider-Man this weekend. And then my dad's hitting me up from overseas like, I saw the new Spider-Man. It's very good. And I'd be like, Dad! And so he would never spoil it for me.
He'd just say it's really good.
He would just tell me, oh, that Tobey Maguire is so good.
Oh, that's right, because it comes out way earlier over there.
Earlier, yeah. They're not quite like Japan, where Japan always gets it last. They always get it 2 months later, which is so sad. Wow. But they're in the Philippines are part of that part of, of the world where they end up getting it a day or two earlier than us for whatever reason.
Yes.
And so he would always beat me to the punch. And then he'd send me pictures like, oh, look, I got this popcorn bucket. And it would be an Amazing Spider-Man popcorn bucket. And I'm like, I don't have that here. Oh, I'll save it for you. And I'd be like, oh, Dad. You know, he'd get all the cool stuff. And it's just because he's a Marvel dad.
Yeah.
You know, he's not really like...
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that's kind
really
of where...
awesome.
Yeah, he always beat me to the punch. And so it's funny that this is all kind of coming together. And it's always on his birthday. So happy birthday, Daddy.
Yes. What a great time to record
Yeah,
this then.
I
Wow.
know. And so we're going to dive into Spider-Man.
Let's do it.
This is a big one. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Spider-Man actually debuted in 1962 in The Amazing Fantasy number 15. So it was a book that was a side book. He didn't have his own title at the time. So he appeared in number 15 of this issue. And, you know, you'll see on social sometimes they celebrate Spider-Man Day, and it's always in August. And that's kind of what this is based off of. And, you know, of course, props to his creators, of course, Stan Lee, a name that you will hear repeatedly on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
As well as Mr. Steve Ditko, who's one of my my favorites of all time. And the issue itself was colored by Stan Goldberg. And so, I mean, you've seen this cover. This cover's iconic. It's Spider-Man swinging. He's got, I don't know if I think it's a civilian under his arm. It could be a robber. I'm not sure. But I don't know if you remember this, Geoffrey, but there's a parody poster of this cover that was created for Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh.
Do you know? And I used it on his face right now.
Oh.
Look into that memory bank, baby.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no. And I posted it on our Instagram stories.
Yes, you did.
It's incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
My photographic memory is failing me right now.
And so that's one of those things, like if you've seen this poster, and I'll post it again, but it's a direct homage to this cover, which, you know, I don't know if you have a spare 25, 30, whatever, 50 grand that I could borrow. But
yes.
I would love to own this issue. But yeah, so it's a big one, you know? And so I'm going to read here kind of like the origin of how this character even came to being created.
Yeah, I think I know a little bit of the story too,
do?
because I've seen a Stan Lee interview.
Yeah.
But let's see if it coincides with. So
this comes courtesy of Screen Rant. And it says, everyone's favorite wisecracking neighborhood webhead was originally just a fly on the wall. After hitting it big with his creation of the Fantastic Four in 1961, Stan Lee spent the next year racking his brain for the next big thing. And then a fly flew in. After seeing the winged insect crawl up a wall at Marvel's offices, the comics legend immediately thought what the company needed at that very moment was a guy who could stick to vertical surfaces. So he came up with the next amazing superhero. And so, first off, is that what you recall?
I think it's more after, because I remember was it like, oh my God, like he made the first like issue or whatever it was. And then he was just like, but I think I remember Marvel was like, no, why would we have an insect, let alone a 16-year-old kid play a superhero? And then he was just like, no, like you need to, like, it's like, because then when you're a kid superhero, you have kid problems. And so like that's why he wanted that dynamic of Peter Parker, was because he's a superhero, but he's also still in high school. Yeah. And I remember, I think he said like the studio was just like, no. Yeah. Why would we publish
do
this?
That? Yeah. And he still went with it. And so that all said, I have an immediate pop quiz for you.
Oh no.
And so which of the following was not an original name for Spider-Man?
Okay.
Stick-to-wall man.
Okay.
Insect man.
Okay.
Fly man.
Okay.
Or mosquito man.
Which one was not?
Which one was not an original name for Spider-Man?
My gut is telling me to go with the one that's more than one word. Stick to the wall,
stick
man.
To the wall,
like,
man.
There's no way someone's like, stick to the wall, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is...
But I mean, it sounds pretty good when you're saying it right now.
Yes.
Because like...
And this is also the 60s, right?
This is also the 60s.
Yes.
You have to remember
like
the jargon's different.
The copyright at that time was very...
we're not going to get into his villains today, but he has villains that are called like Paste Pot Pete and Stickman. So, you know, like
no. I overstepped my
Stiltman,
boundaries.
Sorry,
I overstepped my boundaries.
Yeah. No, what is it?
Mosquito Man.
So
Fly Man.
Stick to Wall Man, Insect Man, Fly Man, or Mosquito Man.
Well, obviously he got inspiration from a fly. Mm-hmm. And mosquito, but also mosquito is also like threatening in a way.
I'm also imagining what these could have looked like.
I know,
and it kind of scares me.
And then Insect Man. I'm gonna say Mosquito Man.
All right, you ready for the answer?
Yeah.
Jeffrey, I'm so sorry. I kind of manipulated you here, but
it was stick to the wall.
No.
Okay. As long as it was stick to the wall.
They were all options for his name, so he was almost.
It was a trick question, guys.
Yeah, it was a trick question. I got you. I'm so sorry. So each one of those names was an actual name that they almost named Spider-Man.
Well, let's just say thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God they didn't.
Yeah, it's whew. I mean, hey, I'm glad that they kind of switched insect species and decided to go with the spider.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, have you seen The Fly? That's right there.
Yeah.
And so on the tails of that, I have my lovely brigade of trading cards again, like the first episode where we kind of dove into a little bit about Tony Stank.
So good.
I do not have a Marvel blaster for Peter Parker, so I don't have what he likes and what he dislikes.
Like a little bio.
Yeah,
about
I don't
him.
have the bio, unfortunately. It's got all the power strengths and stuff, which is like fine, but it's not as fun. So I'm gonna read the back of the 1992 Marvel Masterpieces. It's a set that was entirely painted by an artist named Joe Jusko, who is pretty legendary for the 90s. And so, so here we go. When Peter Parker was bitten by a spider irradiated during a laboratory demonstration, his life was forever changed, for the spider's abilities somehow were transferred into him. He gained superhuman strength, unparalleled agility, and a mysterious danger warning spider sense. Realizing that he must use his newfound powers responsibly, Peter adopted the costume identity of Spider-Man. Ever since, Spidey has waged a one-man war against crime in his never-ending effort to protect society from the ravages of evil.
Wow.
So that about covers Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
That's the Spider-Man that we all kind of know and love. And so that's the card. And so you tell me, like, what again, if we're going to go through these questions that, we'll probably cut that, but when was your first exposure to Spider-Man?
Definitely the 2002 Tobey Maguire.
It was
the very first one, the very first Spider-Man.
So again, like the video games weren't really like, they were there, they were kind of in the background for you, they didn't pull you in necessarily.
I was just thinking about the video games too. It was because of the movie that I got
interesting.
I got that that first Spider-Man video game, and obviously I guess you can say like the Marvel Capcom.
I often feel like it's the video games or the animated series. It's kind of one or the other, if not both, that kind of propel people like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But nothing
No, I think
further.
for sure it was the first Tobey Maguire film, because a lot of the cartoons like I watched growing up were like on the WB. So I saw a lot of those cartoons rather instead of like the comic book character cartoons.
Yeah.
And so the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and I think that's probably why he's my favorite.
Okay.
And we'll go into that later.
Again, we'll go into it shortly.
But yeah, like it was that, and then I got the video game on the PS2 where I remember like when you would web swing with him, he would just be sticking to nothing. It would just be sticking to sky.
Well, that's like the age-old thing. Like, wait, what is he sticking to when he's on there?
So that was the definition of that. Because now the new games, like you need to be near something, a building to
or else it won't do anything. Well, this is also why like Spidey tends to stay in the city, because if you go further out into the boroughs,
I was just thinking that
buildings.
Like any iteration of Spider-Man, Peter Parker has always stayed like in the city of like New York.
Yeah.
Has never really gone cosmic.
Beyond,
obviously with the MCU Spider-Man, that's changing.
As you'll see in Infinity War.
I mean, yeah. But I was like, wow, like I've never seen Spider-Man really outside of New York. Even the games don't touch that at all.
He's very centralized.
Yeah, like he's very New York.
And that's what kind of, again, makes him a great local hero, so to speak. And that's what I kind of loved about the PS4 games in particular, is that those cutscenes in between loading times where he's on the train.
Yes.
And he's like on his phone.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's like the definition of Peter Parker.
Yeah, he's very homegrown. He's a very grassroots superhero. And, and this is something that's kind of, you'll get to know this of him in the first few books, in any kind of origin story that he has, that he's just kind of like, he's his family's barely, middle class. They're kind of under the radar. Barely getting by. They're scraping by. They're very humble. They make the most of what they have. And again, it's kind of great that Stanley took that chance with this character because, he is younger and he's by that default, he's going to be less experienced than everyone else that comes along. You see
it every movie.
Yeah.
And it pisses you off too, because you're like, what are you doing? Like Peter, like, and he's like, oh, he's a kid.
Yeah.
Like he's literally having kid emotions.
Yeah.
Like, you can't get mad at him for that.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny, I saw this meme of the cover of Amazing Spider-Man, and underneath it kind of had a range, and the person put time that Peter Parker is a teenager, and then time that Peter Parker is an adult. And I'm going to have to say, and this is going to lead into our MCU discussion shortly, is that the teenager part, tiny. He's 10% a teenager or high schooler when it comes to the books. And then, when you go to the grand scheme of it all, because you have to remember this title is easily 655 issues or something. Yeah. It's more than 600 issues at this point. Because again, 1962. Yeah. It's decades. Yeah. And so you kind of follow this. It's interesting to see that convert over into the films that have been released, because all three of the primary Spider-Men, Tobey, Andrew, and Tom, respectively, have their on-screen time as teenagers, so to speak.
Yes.
And you kind of see them grow. And so I'm just going to say it now. My one big beef about Mr. Holland is that he has been in high school for 3 films.
3 films.
Not including everything else that he's been in. And so
that's true.
So, anybody who knows me, when they talk about these films, I'm just like, I'm ready for adult Peter Parker already. Yeah. I would love college Peter Parker, at least college Peter Parker.
18-year-old Peter Parker or something.
It's just, it's killing me. But yeah, so, this quick anecdote is that you remember the scene. Spider-Man 1, Sam Raimi, 2002. Mm-hmm. Peter is with Harry. They're taking the field trip through the museum.
Yes.
Do you know what museum that is?
Oh, no. I mean, I'm going to...
Okay, but...
I know it's obviously in New York.
In all fairness, the exterior is different from the interior. So
are we talking about the actual name of the museum?
No. I'm talking, do you know what museum that interior shot was filmed at?
Okay, so not like what it's supposed to be.
No,
like
not what it is. Not what it is in film. Where did they film?
I'm gonna go off a whim of this, Dai.
Look, he just gave me.
I'm gonna give this just a real swing of the bat here.
Okay.
Is it the Natural History Museum?
It is. And so, for those of you who don't know, I actually work at the Natural History Museum, and so. There's this beautiful rotunda room.
Yes. Now I'm thinking about that scene, and it's like the circle. It's
a circle. Yeah. And so it's got these beautiful pillars and this beautiful statue in the middle.
Once or twice, I think. Yeah.
Come on, bro. Yeah. Free tickets.
I know.
And so it's actually part of the original museum that was built in 1913. But long story short, that's the place that they filmed that opening scene in. And so they covered up the statues with like a giant scientific laboratory thing, know? And so they Hollywooded it up.
Of course.
And so it's all, props and such. But it's just kind of funny to think about. I walk through there like often. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, take my picture, Peter. Like that montage of Kirsten Dunst as Mary
so
Jane.
Funny. Take my picture. That's funny.
Yeah. And so, the funny thing is that with every, basic origin story of this character, and even in the comic books, he's in the laboratory.
Yeah.
You see the spider crawling down. Uh-oh, what's happening?
Uh-oh, yeah.
And then he gets bit. Now, here's a question for you.
Yes.
Did you know that he wasn't the only person bit that day?
That day. In that movie?
In general, the character.
Oh, the character in general?
Yeah. So I hate to kind of...
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, and so they introduced this on the heels of the Spider-Verse arc in the comic books. And so they introduced a new character named Cindy Moon, a.k.a. Silk, who also has spider powers.
Okay.
And her origin story is that she too was bitten by the same radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker on that fated day.
On that field trip day?
Yes.
Interesting.
And so her journey is very different from Peter's. It's not nearly as celebrated and, like
superhero.
It's very different.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
I mean, we can get into her later because she is in the MCU, technically. She is, and she's actually in Homecoming and Far From Home. She's just one of the girls in the background, kind of. Okay. She's on the bus, but she's a role by name.
Okay.
And so she's present.
Yep.
And so we can get into her because we don't know if she's gonna end up getting something.
Or just like an Easter egg.
Yeah, she could be something more. But so Peter was not the only person affected that day by a spider. Yeah. So I thought I'd throw that in there for you. Gosh, it's tough to not just dive into the MCU and Sony, right? I think what we can do before that, we'll just backtrack a little bit because I have to talk about the animated series. I just have to do it. That's part of my DNA at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And so for those of you who weren't super aware, there was this 1994 series, an animated series on Fox Kids that was it came in a little bit after X-Men. And, they even had a few crossover episodes at one point, which, were awesome. And Peter was voiced by a man named Christopher Daniel Barnes on that show. And I absolutely loved it. I loved it from soup to nuts. I thought it was just the coolest thing. And, as a kid, I was very X-Men centric. I feel like personally, I didn't get into Spider-Man until I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe just because the reading was just a little different. Maybe I felt a little more parallel to him because of his struggles and such. But yeah, that show, I don't know. Do you have any memories of those at all?
I don't. I don't actually.
It had this crazy rock 90s theme where it's Spider-Man, radioactive Spider-Man, and over and over again for literally a minute and a half. And it's just that over and over again.
Definitely do not remember that. Wow.
It's pretty iconic. I mean, people that are really in tune with the cartoons lately and in recent 10, 15 years, they're all about the spectacular Spider-Man, and there are different voice actors. Like Drake Bell did one of the Peter Parkers. And
I remember that. I think I've heard about that.
Yeah, and then there was this. Here's another one for you that comes out of the woodwork where I don't know if anyone's gonna remember this, but there was this MTV show. They had a Spider-Man show on MTV, and it was kind of like a 3D. I think it was called Quality of Life.
Oh, I don't even know.
It was bizarre. It was absolutely bizarre. There was a female scorpion on there.
Interesting.
I think it was, I don't remember if it was MJ or Gwen, but it was there's so many different nuances of this character in pop culture. Couldn't name it all in an hour.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So I was immersed in all of that. That was what I was growing up with, and trying to keep up with, which was really difficult. What about Spider-Man? Do you know Spider-Man? The Japanese.
Oh my god, no.
The Sentai show.
That sounds very interesting though.
It was exactly what you could imagine. I mean, first of all, shout out to the guy on eBay that I tried to buy the series from, and he totally gypped me and didn't send me anything.
Wow.
But yeah, I was a kid. I was trying to get the series. No, and he just never sent it to me, so I'm kind of bummed. But there was a Japanese Sentai show, very much like old school Power Rangers.
Yeah.
There was Spider-Man. And he's that meme that you'll see in GIFs and sometimes where he's crawling out of the ceiling, and it's just so silly. Oh, you've seen it.
Probably.
I know you've seen it. Yeah, so that's another iconic one. And that's kind of one that people are hoping to see in Into the Spider-Verse. You know what I mean? Because there are
So many
hundreds
iterations.
of Spider-Men,
Yeah.
and Spider-Women that like you would just hope that they all get a cameo somehow. And he's definitely on the top of the list. But yeah, so we're gonna take it back to the video games. So MVC, Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah,
that was it. Did you ever play Shattered Dimensions?
No, I don't think so. No.
That one was pretty dope. It was the Spider-Verse before Spider-Verse, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And you got to play as Peter Parker. You got to play as Earth 616 Spider-Man, which is typical. I believe 2099.
Okay.
Spider-Man Noir.
Ooh.
And who was the fourth one? I can't remember the fourth one. I don't remember the fourth one. I'm sorry. But it was great. Fantastic.
Sounds fun.
Loved that game. Of course, with the Spider-Man movies, they released some with Tobey.
Yeah, I was that had like Sandman and everything. Basically had the storyline a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed playing those.
Yeah, those were fun.
And then I think those were like the only ones I played were the Tobey ones. And then fast forward to like a couple years ago with the PS4 Spider-Man,
Which was a triumph, I think. I mean,
I love it.
Yeah.
I loved it. So yeah.
okay. I mean, this wasn't planned, but do you remember how many suits he had in that game?
Shoot.
I love quizzing Geoffrey. I don't know if anybody realizes
It's a lot
this.
because it's a good amount.
It was a lot, yeah, because you got some after, after
I mean,
you beat the game and you had
are we counting
gameplay.
DLCs or no?
Yeah. which now the Raimi suit and I believe the Amazing Spider-Man suit is in there too, right?
I used the Raimi suit in the first one.
Yeah,
all
of
the
course.
Time. Well, I was like, that's what I was like.
Yeah.
Trying to get experience for. I was like, I need to get this
Yeah.
Raimi suit. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
Do you know exactly how many?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Damn.
I mean, maybe it doesn't count the DLCs. Oh, he's trying to physically.
1, 2, 3.
He's drawing his finger in the air, and he's counting the rows mentally.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, it included like the bombastic bag man, which was like literally Peter Parker wearing a bag over his head, which is personally one of my favorites.
22 random.
Oh, you're so close. You're so close.
What was it?
25.
Oh, damn.
And so, yeah, and it also included like spider shorts, what I like to call spider shorts, which is like also AKA Sexy Peter, where he's just wearing the Spider-Man mask and he's wearing boxers, and it's like, oh my.
Yeah, so that game.
So about 25 suits in that game.
That game I had a lot of fun playing because I love single player games. A lot of my friends like play multiplayer games.
Yeah.
So, but I was just like, I just love the single player games.
Yeah. How did you enjoy the storyline in that particular realm? Because I think for the most part his origin story was pretty intact. I will say that, in the comics, Spider-Man obviously does not have organic webbing, which is the huge difference.
This is what I wanted to touch on.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
Because the first Spider-Man, Tobey was the first kind of like experience with me with Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously in that one, that's when he had like the webs came out of his wrist.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like the normal.
Oh.
I thought that was just like how it was for him.
Yeah.
And then we get into obviously the Amazing Spider-Man, and then we got into the web shooters in Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and I was just like, oh, he made it himself.
Yeah.
Like he makes the webbing himself.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's when I started questioning. I was like, okay, so what's correct here? Like, what do we? So I had to look it up, and I was just like, oh no, he makes it himself. Because he's a genius himself. He's a young genius. So it's only right that he makes it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember when I first heard about this. And so there was a magazine. I don't think that they're publishing anymore, but it was called Wizard Magazine. Uh-huh. And so Wizard Magazine was infamous for doing fan casts. They were the fan casters before social media happened, before the internet came into play, and they would dedicate, like a spread in an issue to, who should play this person in a movie. Mm-hmm. And so when they first introduced like, Spider-Man's happening, I was like, holy crap, Spider-Man. And so I remember so distinctly that they were like breaking it down, what they know about Sony's Spider-Man. And they were like, organic webbing. And everyone was like, is it coming out of his butt? Like,
Jesus.
Because it's organic. Well, because, anything scientifically speaking.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, you think, spider, it comes from its rear.
Oh, yes, because an actual, yes.
Yeah,
sure,
and so
yes.
immediately the thought was like, oh God, what's he gonna look like? And so they started photoshopping Tobey's head on like a tarantula, and like it was weird. It was a weird time. The 90s were really strange. And so seeing an organic take, at first I hated it. I was like, why? But he's smart. The whole thing is that he's an intelligent young man, and
like
he can fashion it himself.
Yes.
That's the whole thing about Peter, is that he's very relatable and grounded, and he uses his brain despite the strength that he has as a superhero. And so when they carried that over, I was just like, I mean, that's cool because he never runs out, which is a thing that Spider-Man always encounters. He's always running out
of webs, sure. I mean,
running out of cartridges.
Run out in, was it 2?
In 2,
in 2?
Yeah. And so and that was also something they showed often in the cartoon. Like it would be the cliffhanger of the episode. Like he's like, oh, I gotta get to MJ, and you hear the flip, and then he's like, oh, I'm out, and then he's falling, and it's like dun dun dun, to be continued. And so you couldn't do that with Spider-Man, with Raimi's Spider-Man, but you understand why they did it, because do you know how much it costs to be Spider-Man? We have there are many a graphic that break this down, which is insane.
Damn, I don't because thinking about it, like it probably costs a lot of money to manufacture that webbing,
because it's all it's the technology behind it, the fact that parts need to be replaced. You think about like Apple, for instance.
Sure.
How often do you have to update things?
Exactly. It's a lot.
The technology antiquates every 2 years even. And so there's this incredible infographic. And so the web shooters alone, do you want to take a stab at it?
Like one web shooter, or for both, like on both?
Oh, we're talking both web shooters.
Okay. Oh man, I don't want to lowball it now. 1,000 each.
Oh,
damn,
buddy, no. We're talking about $50,000 a pair,
just to make
a pair,
like durable, like a pair of durable web shooters,
just to have them. And so,
wow.
So this in particular, this kind of dialogue is what made me really appreciate Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Okay.
Because in Amazing Spider-Man 1, you see him go through the process. You see him sewing together his suit. You see him literally putting together these web shooters, and that adorable when he first shoots the web that's actually working, and he's like, yeah, I did it. Wow. Yeah. And and you don't really get that with Tobey, other than the fact that he had fun with the webbing in his room, and he's like going nuts, and it's like, okay, cool.
Discovering it, yeah.
But Andrew Garfield got to really play out he really is a genius, at work.
Yeah.
And $50,000 ain't no joke.
It's not. That's a lot for a 16-year-old kid.
Right,
that's
for a 16-year-old kid. And so it breaks it down to the suit and all this stuff, but the overall cost of being Spider-Man, according to this graphic, whenever it was made, $1 million.
Oh, wow.
So you think about...
Well, no wonder they made Iron Man his mentor, right?
It makes sense, right? You have to think about it from a realistic sense. I mean, I say that loosely because this is sci-fi we're talking about in pop culture. But that, they kind of... And this is why I kind of appreciate the fact that Tom Holland got the treatment he did with Tony Stark in mind, is that realistically, quote unquote, Peter Parker would never be able to afford any of this. Period. $50,000 for web shooters. Web shooters, that's not including his suit. That's not including the lenses and all the things that he has, like the Spider-Mobile.
He needs to do to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, people have their favorite actor. But to me, being what I do designate as a diehard Spider-Man fan,
yes,
I appreciate all of them for different reasons.
Yeah.
So
Same.
Yeah, so the web shooters are one thing. Yeah, but have you heard of the Spider-Mobile by chance?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've really delved.
I just imagine hearing the same horn that Ant-Man has for his van every time it comes by, but it's basically a little like Jeep, like
same.
Yeah, and it was something that was very big back in the day. And shout out to Dan Slott, who is actually one of my favorite Spider-Man writers and one of my mutuals on social. He wrote the series for a very long time, and he loves the Spider-Mobile. Like the Spider-Mobile is his thing, and so shout out to Dan. But yeah, speaking of tech, there's also the nanotech that's actually crept into the comic books more recently.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, it has. And
so does some of the movie stuff creep into like
it
new
does.
issues coming up?
It does. It goes both ways. Yeah, which is I think a very smart thing to do, because it's such a dialogue of it's not like the comics. It's not like the comics. But then now
the comics are taking...
Now the comics are being influenced by the movies in senses where they're putting characters that naturally wouldn't be so involved in some instances, and then they're taking things like the technology and pulling it into the comics. And so...
Got it.
One in particular, speaking of nanotech, one of Spider-Man's most recent suits, he, in the comics, he's much older. He's like 28, 29, maybe 30.
Yeah.
He's been rich, he's been poor, he's kind of everywhere. But he has this incredible technology that, it's very, very Tony Stark-esque.
Yeah.
Where he can just tap and it formulates on his body over his clothing. Uh-huh. And so he can just spring into action. And, he's been out, he's been, closed up. And some people know he's Spider-Man, some people don't. It depends on which arc you're following. But he's made it so easy for himself that he doesn't have to worry about stuffing his clothes in a trash can and putting his backpack somewhere,
Like, where do you leave it?
Yeah, he can just quite literally dive into a room, go doot, and then he's Spider-Man. He's done.
That's amazing.
And they've kind of equipped him in a way that's very similar to Karen and Tom Holland's Spider-Man suit, where it's got the technology inside and all that stuff. But it's not too heavily. But he does have a new suit. There's a new in the comics, which is very silver, almost teal, very robotic looking. I've not read it yet. I'm kind of reluctant. It's kind of like it's not my red and blues. But Nick Spencer is an incredible writer, and he's made some waves. We'll probably talk about him more with Captain America later on, because he did some stuff with with Cap. But it's a very interesting take. I'm going to show you right now just because I want to see your reaction, actually,
to the
new suit. Okay. Spider-Man new suit.
In the comics.
In the comics. And the thing is that people don't know how long this is going to be. They don't know if it's a temporary...
how long it's going to last?
Or if it's a...
Oh, wow.
It's very different. Talk about a stark contrast. It's incredibly different.
That is very... Wow. Yeah. It's like... I don't even know how to react to that, because it's just like, that's not how you know Spider-Man.
Yeah, very high tech, very, very, I don't know what to call it. But yeah, so that's been the talk of the town. I remember walking into a game shop, midsummer one day just to kind of get out of the house and look around. And I forgot what I had said. I think I was wearing a Spider-Man face covering. Yeah. And the guy behind the counter was like, "You seen the new suit?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What'd you think?" I was like, "I'm not into it." And he's like, "Nah, I don't think anybody is." But there's purpose to it. There's obviously purpose to it. It's that age old, like everyone's judging it by the looks only.
By the looks of it, but once you see it in context, maybe?
Yeah, when you see it in context, then it's a different story. So, I mean, is there anything in particular in the films that kind of like, as far as the tech or Peter himself, that you wondered what was true to form?
What was... Tech-wise? Or just anything? Anything?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's a tough one.
It is tough. Man,
but I will say they really, the personality, when it comes to personality.
That's what I keep like going back to. Yeah. Like, even though like, which is crazy, each Spider-Man, actors play Spider-Man, they kind of look like different ages. Obviously, like Tobey. Yeah. And then you keep going, you go all the way up to Tom, and you're like, oh, they're getting younger and younger. But
Benjamin Button.
But if you think about it, they all played the same age in each movie, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, it's true.
But in each movie, they've all encapsulated what Peter Parker is. Yeah. Which is a high school nerd, like gets bullied. Yep. And then he turns into this superhero and he doesn't know what to do like with these powers. And
consistent. It's absolutely consistent with the books, and
so, yeah,
and that's kind of
it's a hard origin story to mess up.
Yeah, I can't remember what Stan said specifically about Peter Parker, but he really is like the embodiment of like the relatability when it comes to superhero.
Yes, 100%.
Like he has problems.
Yes.
Like he loves burgers. He loves to like go to movies, but he's also like he was that kid that was
sure, he's gonna stop a robbery, but he also doesn't know how to ask out MJ.
Exactly.
Like he's still gonna be nerdy.
He's still gonna be nerdy and insecure, but and that says a lot about what the suit does to a person and how it changes when his self-confidence comes into play, and how he embraces having powers at all, and the strength. And again, like his intellect is really a big factor of Spider-Man in particular, because he's not all super human strength. He's not all spider senses. It's really about his quick wit and his mind. Yeah. Which, leads to a lot of crazy storylines in the books. And so, we're officially 8 movies deep with just Spider-Man in general in modern age. And it's just like, there's so many storylines that they could try to pull off. Yeah. God.
Yeah. Can we talk about the growth of each Spider-Man in each of their respective movies?
Sure. Let's start.
So like seeing Tobey go from Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 3, how he grew as a Spider-Man character. And,
And I thought the pacing with Tobey was really great. Let me just say, oh my gosh, when that movie came out, I loved Tobey Maguire. Like Tobey Maguire was everything to me because of that movie, and I just wanted to protect him fully. But I think that the way that they treated it, were, again, like I mentioned it before, you get a piece of him in high school. You get the idea that he is this smart kid that gets bullied. He lives with his aunt and uncle. They're the world to him. The inevitable happens, et cetera, et cetera. You fast forward. And then, then he's off into his own world. He works at the Daily Bugle. He's doing the things. He's got the girlfriend he can't quite keep.
Delivering pizza.
Pizza time. Oh my God, so good. Oh, Spider-Man 2 is like
I think Spider-Man 2 might be my favorite one.
It is. It's my favorite. Overall?
In that trilogy?
My favorite as well.
Yeah.
Oh, just the trilogy. Overall or trilogy? Mine is overall. Spider-Man 2 is number 1 for me.
Oh, that's really, now I have to really think about it. But it's definitely up there for me because like when you watch it back, you're like, this was good.
Yeah. And what I do appreciate about Raimi in particular is that he was able to kind of pay homage to many characters without forcing them down your throat. So you get to see Robbie and you get to see J. Jonah Jameson, who is iconic. And I'm glad they're pulling him over. Oh my God, I never saw that coming. I screamed so loud in the theater. Multiverse. Betty Brant, of course, who was played by Elizabeth Banks in the first film. Yes. And then, later on you get a taste of Eddie Brock and you get Gwen Stacy and is all these characters put together, on top of the villains that were featured. And, even though Spider-Man 3 wasn't exactly the perfect film, it still pulled some stuff off. Like I loved the Sandman storyline.
I did. I loved that part of the movie.
And it was interesting to see kind of this Peter Parker that had grown from being a sweet mama's boy, auntie's boy, if you want to say. And then he comes into this dark, symbiotic sort of, I'm going to gyrate in the middle of the street. Everyone knows the scene.
Like that walking sidewalk. Walking down the sidewalk scene.
Oh, bizarre.
I'm pretty sure I watched it in theaters. I have never cringed so hard. It's probably top 5 cringe-worthy scenes. Because I was just like,
what is he doing?
Wow. Hey. Yeah. But I'm like, hey.
That whole montage is just so silly.
When the symbiote gets in you, though, like, I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. And the symbiote is another thing. I mean, maybe we'll touch on that if we do a Venom episode. But yeah, it was great to see that they did tackle, all things considered, they tackled a lot in Peter Parker's core story.
Yes.
They got the Norman Osborn. They got the Harry Osborn. They got Doc Ock. They got Sandman.
iconic villains.
Green Goblin 2, who was
Yes.
Harry, and then they got Venom. Like you think about it, you're like, holy smokes, he really covered
Sam
a
really
lot.
hit all the
he
staples of a Spider-Man
Yeah.
film. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you that I was in Spider-Man 1?
As an extra?
Yeah.
I don't think you have. No.
I was an extra in Spider-Man 1.
Which part?
So there's this, and this is actually going to cut in.
Can you see yourself?
I can see myself, but I'm like a wicked blur.
Yeah.
But I know
But
it's
you
me.
know you're in there.
And so
Oh.
I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad. They don't know the story. So I think I don't know how old I was. I think I was in college at the time.
Okay.
And there used to be this website that was called like what'sinhollywood.com or something. It was very 2.0.
Yes,
like it was
of
very
course.
new age internets.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could see, movie premieres and shooting locations and all this stuff.
Casting
casting
type of
calls.
things, yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know how I figured this out. I found out that they were filming Spider-Man in Downey. So I was like, heck, I'm going to try.
Wow.
So I put my name in, and then I immediately got it back. And I still have the packet that they sent me that I printed out. It was like 25 pages long.
Oh my God.
And it was like, it had like a picture of Spider-Man on, like a comic book picture of Spider-Man. And it's like, congratulations, you're going to be in Spider-Man. And I was like, oh, yay. It resonates so much crazier now.
Whoa, this is
now I'm like,
crazy.
no freaking way that I was in Spider-Man. And I tend
Yeah.
to forget that I was. But so they were filming for 3 days in the middle of Downey.
Okay.
And so I had to like call out of work or like not go to class or something.
Sure,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I'm going to school. And then in reality, I was going to go to a lot for 12 hours a day with a paper. And all they offered us was paper lunch bags, with like a drink,
my
a juice
God.
box,
Oh
a
my
bag of
God.
chips and a sandwich.
Hollywood struggle.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
it. That was it. That's all you got it for being an extra. So let me keep in mind, this was the middle of summer.
Oh no.
And we were supposed to be filming fall in New York. So we were
Okay.
all wearing
wearing warm clothes.
warm clothing.
Oh no. Oh my God.
So I went for 3 days. It's the big scene where Peter is in, it's the World Festival scene where Peter and MJ's in the Chinese dress and Green Goblin comes to attack the festival. Yeah, so I was in that set. So when all those people are scattering, when he saves the kid from the falling building rubble, I'm
Yes.
right behind him in that scene. And so I found myself in a perfect blur because I was wearing this, I used to have this brown like pleather trench coat that I got for $2 at Ross. It was my Gambit jacket.
Oh,
And so
nice.
It was my Gambit jacket, and I had it on for this shoot, and so I had to wear it 3 times in a row. And I found myself, and it's funny because I was wearing a light colored vest or something underneath, like a sweater vest. And whoever was directing, I don't know that it was Sam Raimi. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But whoever was directing that day was like, pulled me in and was like, I want you to stand there, but can you button up your jacket because it's bouncing off the light? And I said, sure. So I buttoned up my jacket because I was like, I am not moving from this spot.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this scene, and so I'll show you after this, and I'll probably post it. But that
Oh
perfect
my
little
God.
blur. So I was in.
Yeah, you guys. I'm very psyched right now.
I completely forget. And so my weird item. I'm gonna jump into my weird item ahead of the game. So my weird Spider-Man item. I don't have all of them. Okay, so I have
Okay.
a bunch of weird Spider-Man
I know you
stuff.
do. I know you do.
Okay, and so very ambitious me, who was on set.
What did you steal?
He knows me too well. So we were advised to return all of the props.
Of course. Why would I do any of that?
I was wearing a Gambit jacket. You really expect me to return things wearing a thief jacket? And so somewhere else in my storage, I have pennant flags because we're waving these little flags.
Yes.
I smuggled a couple flags under my sleeve. A button which says like Unity Festival.
Yeah.
And in this tiny tin, I always forget it's in here because when I go through my stuff periodically to like clean out stuff that I don't want or I'm just going to sell, I shook it. And I was like, what is this? And it's a Spider-Man tin, a mint tin that I've had for forever. And I was shaking it. And I was like, there's nothing in here. And then of course, you open it and I was like, oh, and lo and behold, there are 2 World Unity balloons that I smuggled.
Oh my. It's literally 2.
And they're from 2001 from the shoot. Crazy.
That's honest. Oh my god.
So that's my weird Spider-Man item.
Look at these guys. These World Unity Festival.
Yeah. So they branded the entire thing.
Prop.
It's a Hollywood prop. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Sonny.
20 years.
Don't sue me.
20 years.
20 years.
Holy.
Yeah, and so they're kind of shriveled up. You can't use them anymore, of course. But the pennant flags and the buttons are like pristine.
Good condition.
And the last day of filming, I even managed to bring in a pen, and I had one of Tobey's stunt doubles sign the pennant. So I have it somewhere.
Oh, so it was one of those days.
Yeah,
it was like a second unit.
He was only there the first day, and then the rest it was
like a second unit type of thing.
Yeah, it was second unit. So yeah, that's my weird.
That's honestly pretty freaking cool. What the hell? I was not expecting that.
So there you go, buddy. There you go.
Holy shit.
I unfortunately have nothing to report for Amazing Spider-Man. But yeah, you know, how do you feel about that film since you haven't seen the second?
I had to always like rewatch like the movie.
The lizard, too. It's about the lizard.
Yes, I remember that. When it comes to Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, I think he hits it on the nose. I don't think any one actor has not hit it on the nose, and they all play Peter Parker in a different way. Be a lizard, Mr. Lizard Man.
Yeah,
Mr. Lizard.
But you gotta say, like that cameo, that Stanley cameo, has to be the top 3.
Pretty solid.
Yeah, and for people who don't quite remember, it's the one where Spider-Man and the Lizard are just going to town in the library, and Stan is just like his little librarian self with his headphones listening to classical music, and just coincidentally just gets out scot-free. Yeah. But that's one of my favorites.
I also think another thing that I like is like when villains, like we're gonna go back to like the Sandman story in Spider-Man 3 for Tobey. I love villains with a backstory that makes you kind of almost root for them.
Yeah. Oh, Sandman was like exceptional.
Exactly. That's why I think Sandman worked way better than Venom, than Eddie's story.
Eddie Brock was forced into that film.
Yeah, because Eddie was just like, he just hated Peter Parker.
Yeah.
He was like revenge, blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't really resonate. Like, oh, you just suck.
You're just like, this guy sucks. And then he gets like the power.
You're trying to get pictures of Spider-Man, and the guy you're competing with literally is Spider-Man. And just, but the Sandman's backstory, I was like, makes sense.
Thomas Hayden Christensen? No, that's Hayden Christensen is in Star Wars.
But it is Thomas something.
Yeah, I gotta look this up.
But yeah, I did like that because I felt for him, because like he's doing that for a reason, and he didn't ask for that power of being Sandman, but now he's using it because
so tragic.
Yeah, like he needs to give.
I was close. Thomas Hayden Church. No, he's fantastic. Yeah,
because he wants to give his daughter. He wanted to give his daughter like a better life, but all he knew was how to be a criminal. Yeah, and that sucks. But Mr. Lizard Man.
Yeah. Kurt Connors.
Yes. I forget. Damn, I really forgot about that series, man.
Like he had the regeneration was his thing, and the DNA and the reptilian sort of combination. Yeah. Clearly, he didn't watch Jurassic Park, but so Kurt Connors was all about trying to create and be better, and again the Amazing Spider-Man series just really tapped into the science end of things.
It did, yeah. I do remember that ending fight scene. Not as much, but
on top of the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was...
Captain Stacy just bit the dust.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Tragic.
So
yeah, but I haven't seen the
Amazing
Spider-Man 2.
And he hasn't seen Amazing
Spider-Man 2.
So we can't even fully analyze this,
man. You can totally... I mean...
On its anniversary, how dare you?
I know. I was just thinking I should just watch it right now.
But also, you're gonna feel my Gwen Stacy wrath, because as a Gwen Stacy fan,
I've seen clips from it on YouTube. So I've seen like her death scene and stuff. So I don't care if you can spoil it for me, whatever. But like I've seen that death scene, and I was just like, oh my god, that was killed one of the most gruesome. Even though it wasn't bloody at all. Like it's not no Tarantino kind of death, but I'm like. It's for a PG-13 movie for kids, technically.
Literally broke her back.
I was like, oh, this was a very tragic death scene.
I remember when that dropped. Oh God, no pun intended. But I remember when that film was released, and the critics were just like, how could you kill off the leading lady? How could you kill off Emma Stone? And it was like, this is what happens when you do a full-on adaptation that's almost very, very similar to the comic books. And, you know, and that particular arc was inspired by the legendary The Night Gwen Stacy Died in Amazing Spider-Man. And so that was a two issue arc. I have both of them. They're both signed by Stan and also, you know. It's a real storyline. It really happened. It didn't happen like that. And it was under different circumstances. But it was very similar, you know, very tragic that, you know, Spider-Man tried to save her. And he couldn't. And, you know, and it's a basic scientific sort of formula that he didn't take into account, that shooting the web, it attaching to her, the whiplash and the effect of inertia and all that, you know, would have pulled her in the incorrect way. So in the comic books,
what a way to die. Oh my god.
When
it's like making me like
right when she falls off the bridge in the comics and he does the thing in the original printings, there is literally a little, like, you know, text next to her neck, and it's a snap.
Oh god.
And they had to take it out in future printings because it was considered too graphic to have in a comic book. God. And so there's this huge thing about that character, you know, about Gwen Stacy, and we're going to get into Gwen Stacy eventually. But yeah, and so when they brought that to life on screen, like, I just had heart palpitations. I was like, oh, they went there. And it's unfortunate that the rest of the film was just so crammed. It was very similar to Spider-Man 3 in that way.
That's what I've heard, yes.
It's very crammed with, you know, you got the Green Goblin 2, you got Electro, and then you kind of also introducing Felicia Hardy into the film, who was played by Felicity Jones from, she's Jyn Erso from the Star Wars films, Star Wars film from Rogue One.
Yes.
Who I loved, by the way. She's actually one of my favorite Star Wars characters. But so she had, you know, much like Raimi's trilogy, they tried to kind of put these little cameos of characters that existed. And so Felicia is in there and she's brunette and you're just kind of like, what? But then in my head, I was doing headcanon. I was like, she's wearing a wig. She has white hair under that. She's the Black Cat. Yeah, you know, and so that's where my mind immediately went. But they just had so much in that storyline. They just tried to pile on a lot. They really tried to pile it on. And that's where it kind of falls short, you know. But that look, that Amazing Spider-Man 2 look, that suit, that's my suit. You know, like, all due respect to the Raimi suits.
No, 100%.
And the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit, but Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit is like comic, right off the comic pages, you know? And funny enough, you know, for this episode kind of teaser image, the split screen is, you know, of course, the Spider-Man 2 poster with Tobey's, you know, the Twin Towers reflecting in his lenses. Yep. But the other side is a cover for a recent issue of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, drawn by an artist that I love. His name is Olivier Coipel. He's one of my favorite modern artists when it comes to the comics. And Olivier, in particular, he did the Spider-Verse arcs. And so he did all the primary artwork for that in the Amazing Spider-Man books. And he kind of pulled the Andrew Garfield look into what he looked like in the book. So he kind of had floppy hair. It was the short on the sides. You don't know because you haven't seen the film, but when he graduates into the maturity, you know how they do the maturity thing. We talked about this in Iron Man episode. But when, you know, he goes from this kind of scruffy hairdo to, in Spider-Man 2, he's cleaner cut. He's doing it for the lady. He looks a little sharper. And so that look in particular was adapted into Peter Parker of the 2005 era. And so I kind of love that. And again, it's like, it's part of that whole which inspired what.
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
Yeah, and then, you know, you don't know this because you haven't seen the film, but
I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. But Mary Jane Watson was actually in Amazing Spider-Man 2. They just cut her out. And she was portrayed by Shailene Woodley.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so she's in. I can't remember specifically if they have deleted scenes floating around, but there are pictures, and she was kind of scripted to be like the Spider-Man fangirl, and so she had a tattoo of Spider-Man on her wrist.
Okay.
And she was literally the girl next door, and Gwen was like, "Oh, who are you?" you know, and she was all about Spider-Man, and of course, in that universe, Gwen knew that Spider-Man was Peter, and so it started to kind of. That was a whole other storyline. I'm kind of glad they didn't do it because, again, it's so saturated with so much other stuff.
So much.
It just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have been interesting to see if they had gotten a chance to do another Spider-Man, an Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But
why did the third one get canned? They just, no one knows, right?
Because enter the negotiations.
That's right.
For Mr. Tom Holland. Eventually. It wasn't immediate, but that was part of that whole... That whole thing. And I think they were also trying to segue and bring this Sinister Six movie to light, which has been in the can for forever. Yeah, just waiting to be picked up. But but yeah, so that's that segue. We can segue to Tom Holland from there.
That's a segue to the Tom Holland version.
Tom Holland. Quackson, Mr. Quackson.
And it's croissant.
Quackson. Tom Holland doesn't know how to say croissant.
It's interesting, obviously, with this iteration of Spider-Man, because obviously it's in the MCU.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a couple interviews from the Russo brothers. I love watching their interviews. I love watching like their whatever.
They're fantastic.
Like whatever. And so I remember because I believe that's Joe Russo's favorite character, and just remember him telling like how like hard it was just to even think about getting Spider-Man in the MCU because it's Sony's property, and like why would we even think about giving you to Marvel Disney or whatever, you know? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall to hear what
not a mosquito man on the wall, not a fly man on the wall.
Maybe
not sticks to walls man.
I would have loved to hear what Kevin Feige pitched to Amy.
Oh God, can you imagine?
At Sony?
Yeah,
and be like, this is what will happen.
There was an idea.
Yeah, like this is what's gonna happen if you let us bring Peter Parker into the MCU. Yeah, and then like logistic wise, money wise, but it's like this is the impact that he will have for years on end. Yeah, and it's just like, and it happened. Like
I'll be honest, I never thought I would see it in my lifetime.
Like, I hope the listeners know, like, when it comes to like the movie industry and everything, and studios and politics of studios, that is incredibly hard and difficult. Very difficult. Like for a major studio, to literally, I mean, no disrespect to Sony, but Spider-Man is probably one of their IPs that they will never ever sell. Yeah, they will never ever let go because they have no reason at the end of the day, if they make anything Spider-Man, that's gonna make them money. Yeah, and it's probably their only $1 billion maker that can probably they can release. So for them to allow that IP to be used in another studio's film, is unheard of.
A lot goes into it, and it's so interesting because you have people who just don't understand the depth that goes into that sort of negotiation, and so they should just give it back, and it's they should just buy it. And it's like it doesn't work like that.
I'm sure Disney can buy that tenfold. I'm sure Disney can buy Spider-Man 5 times. Yeah, no, but Sony will never do it.
Never let go. And then this goes down even deeper because it goes down to the theme parks. So for instance, back in the day when I was a kid, Universal Studios had free reign of the Marvel superheroes. They used to have a superhero show. Their meet and greets were with the X-Men and Spider-Man and Green Goblin and Wolverine. Yeah. Not that he's not an X-Man, but and Daredevil. Like they were all there. And so when these negotiations started happening, everyone's kind of like, why aren't they in Disneyland? And then you think about it and it's like, well,
it affects everything.
And so Sony's hold on the Marvel superheroes in a theme park setting still belongs to Universal Studios. So that's why they're still in Florida. They still have the Hulk roller coaster, the Hulk coaster, the Spider-Man 3D experience. All that stuff is still in motion because Disney simply cannot buy it. And that's why we have Avengers Campus and not Marvel Land or whatever we would have called it.
Because it's spread amongst different.
It's spread amongst different properties. It's spread amongst different, notable rights and all that stuff. So it's like it gets really granular. And so if they can't even get the rights to have the Hulk at the park,
and that battle,
how would you ever imagine that they could fully own him again?
That's just Universal just not wanting to let go of that.
It's crazy to me. I'm just like, I mean, granted, they've cut deals. It's great, but also it does affect the storylines.
It does.
And so that's
like
a
Mark
huge
Ruffalo
thing.
He said in an interview, he was just like, like the way that the deal is set up, like the Hulk can never have his own standalone movie in the Marvel universe.
He can't.
But if you take all the times Hulk has appeared in any of the MCU movies,
he has
that's
his own
basically
film.
That's basically a standalone film.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's how I like to look at it when it comes. I mean, obviously it's a tangent for the Hulk, but that's how I like to see it as a Hulk, because it's very hard to tell Banner's story as a whole. So when I saw all the flack for people when they're saying that like they don't give Banner credit at all in Endgame, because they would have loved to see obviously the Hulk beat up Thanos, because Thanos beat Hulk up at the beginning of Infinity War. People are like, what the hell? Like, I just wanted to see the Hulk beat up Thanos, get his revenge and stuff. And I was just like, I get it, but
it's not.
You have to know, like, if Banner was just, if the Hulk was just bent on revenge, he would have just been in revenge the whole time, and then he would have never grown, and we would have never gotten,
the character growth have been very different. Yeah, exactly. And so that affected Tom Holland's storyline, I think, quite a bit, because I don't think people even realize, like, technically the MCU cannot use the words Mary Jane. They cannot use the redhead trademarked Mary Jane Watson, and thus that's why we have Michelle Jones. And then their cheeky way of paying homage to her is calling her MJ, and and then
there's ways to
they get around it a bit,
and that goes back to Age of Ultron, where they can't use the word mutants.
Yes, exactly.
And Cap had to say enhanced. We have an enhanced in the field.
Yeah.
But now that doesn't matter
now
anymore,
it doesn't matter,
because
at least for that, which is phenomenal. Like, hey, we got something. But and this is why we perhaps this is why we don't see Gwen Stacy in this one, because Betty Brant is a striking resemblance to Gwen Stacy as we know her.
So they have to figure something.
But they're playing homages instead, and and that goes for Ned. Ned is a completely different character in the comics, and this character in particular with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He's very much gunky from Miles Morales' world, and so they've kind of amalgamated all of these characters and storylines to kind of fit him.
That's a good kind of comparison, for our podcast theme. It's what makes it so different from the comics to the movies, and that's a great example of that. Yeah. When the studio is given certain material that they can or cannot use, they have to kind of go around it, and that's what they did with Ned, Ganke, and everything.
Yeah.
But the fact that we have five to six, I think, Tom Holland appearances, movies, is impressive in itself.
Yeah.
And we all remember that debacle where they weren't going to renew Spidey's MCU contract.
I've never seen the internet more
I know that was insane, because I was just like, ooh, that's huge.
It's huge.
That's really tough.
And the crazy thing being is that he's officially done after he's done with this last film. His contract is over.
But his current contract, his Disney MCU.
Yeah, and so they either have to renew or they let him sail.
You're not going to have Spidey lead the Young Avengers.
He needs to be Spider-Man forever. I want to see adult Peter Parker.
He said he wanted to be Spider-Man in the MCU for as long as he can.
I just want adult Peter Parker already, man.
I mean, we don't know how the money works when it comes to distribution and everything, but I'm sure that's a very huge thing that's playing a role.
I'm sure, it's
tremendous. Sony needs to make their money, but also Disney needs to make their money
and
too.
that's why the recent news of the Spider-Man films coming to Disney Plus, for instance, is
the Sony movie,
tremendous deal, because that's kind of a crossover you don't anticipate to see, because in a world where everyone is releasing their own app, everyone's releasing their own Plus service.
It's capitalism, everybody. We love to see it.
Yeah, you would almost expect to see Sony Plus But thankfully
even keep
not.
up,
And they're
yeah.
just going to go ahead and put them on Disney. And I think it's a smart
That's
move.
another distribution deal. in
So,
itself.
yeah, so
thank
I
God.
mean-
So I can finally watch Amazing Spider-Man 2.
That's
I'm gonna binge both of them.
please just do it.
I know.
Oh my
I also
gosh.
maybe I'll just skip over Gwen Stacy's death.
How dare you?
I saw it on TV.
Just
I was just
fast
like-
forwarded a little bit, but you gotta watch it because it it really ties the story together. But yeah, so it's interesting to see this new Spider-Man, high school Spider-Man.
Yes.
It's really like
But yes, like you said at the top of the show, he's been high school Spider-Man.
forever. Oh my
For
god!
at
And
least
then
3-4 years now.
you account for the snap. So he's been in high school for
That's true too.
5 years.
Because when he came back,
yeah.
they went back to
They
high
went
school.
back to high school. He was gone for
It's
5
gotta
years.
be his senior year. I hope
my God.
Far From Home was his senior year.
I hope it's my wish is that it's the beginning of the film. They're graduating and they're going to college like that.
Oh, for the last movie?
Yeah, that would be my one hope.
There's no way there's no way John Watts is saying he's still in high school.
Oh, I will. Oh God, I'll just be like, well,
No way.
but yeah,
I think the snap did have a lot.
It had a lot to do, yeah.
It made it feel like it was forever.
for sure. But yeah, so Tom Holland's Spider-Man in particular, he's a bit sciencey. He's quite sciencey. I mean, thanks to Tony as well. But he concocted his own webbing and all that good stuff. But
I think that's what they tried to make. I think they tried to tie up Tom Holland's character,
Mm-hmm.
like tell us who he is
Mm-hmm.
in that like 3-5 minute scene in Civil War.
Yeah.
He's like, yep, I got these powers 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Math test, nailed it.
Yeah.
I built this CD player. Boom.
Yeah.
I built this webbing. Yep. It's like, oh, yep, he's a superhero. He
Yeah.
got his power 6 months ago, and he's a genius because he made this whole
Right.
textile strength of a webbing.
And that in the way that he is so absolutely endearing when he says and shares these things about himself is really what makes me love Tom Holland. I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and I don't have much criticism for him at all, except for the fact he can't say croissant. but
But that's
but
Tom
it's
Holland.
still the charm.
but not Peter Parker.
This is also true. But yeah,
yes.
and so they were still able to kind of ensure that part of Peter, which is very integral to his character, they still had it present, which I feel that they didn't do as much with Raimi.
Like he's a kid.
He's a kid and
feel,
he's
yeah.
learning and he's being absorbed by all this stuff that's happening around him. He's in the Quinjet. Happy Hogan is like babysitting him, and yet he knows how to work around Stark Tech and he knows his way around things.
I like one of my favorite moments is when he's in the car with Vulture and he's taking them to prom.
Incredible scene.
Yeah,
Michael Keaton
That's
is
literally
like-
him being like,
Yeah.
does Peter Parker come out or does Spider-Man come out? But he
Right.
can't break because he's with
He's with oh my gosh,
Does it start with an L? I feel like it starts with an L.
Liz Allen.
Yes, I was right. Liz
Allen. Liz Allen.
Okay, so yeah, that scene, I was just like,
Incredible.
Oh, wow. That's
my
literally
gosh.
him tugging internally of
Yeah.
like, what do I do?
Right.
Because like I'm going to prom, but I'm also like, this guy's about to like kill me or something.
Yeah, I mean, didn't Tobey's Parker have something very similar where he could have had? It was not quite an Uncle Ben moment, but he like just chose not to be Spider-Man at that moment. He just stayed his course, and he was.
Was
like,
that when he was having dinner with Harry Osborn?
that?
And
I
the
think
blood
so.
and the blood fell down.
Yeah,
and he's
the
why
Thanksgiving
are you-
dinner.
Like, yeah, why are you bleeding?
Yeah.
Oh, bike messenger.
Yeah, and
Yeah. And it's
that
just
whole
like,
that
oh
tension
my
there.
God.
Yeah, and I feel like that's very similar in that fact.
Yes.
But the one with Tom and let me call him Parker, with Parker and the Vulture in particular is just like
Very intense.
amplified because of
Very
Michael
intense.
Keaton's presence in
Yes.
that film. And so yeah, I think they presented the Vulture in an incredible way. Like he's foraging parts from existing parts in the MCU,
going back to like I love a villain with a backstory. Like he like after the Battle of New York.
Yeah.
And like no one's cleaning it up.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, I gotta make amends. I gotta like all this stuff. He's like, why not steal these
So
parts
crazy.
and then do something?
Because like with many castings, when you first hear the first news, you're like, what? But because at this point, being it the third run for Spider-Man, I was expecting, okay, here we go again. Norman Osborn, take 3. And instead, and you know, not that he came to fruition in Amazing Spider-Man, they like danced around him. But, you know, I honestly expected them to kind of open with the Green Goblin again. But to hear them bring in Vulture instead was very interesting because, you know, in comics, he's kind of like, he's like a glorified like man in tights who flies around and he's really like, weird and he's old.
His comic book costume is like, it's literally a dude with feathers.
There's so many jokes about it. Yeah, he's just a crazy old man. And so when they introduced this very MCU version of the character, I was like, actually, I was very impressed. I was like, dang, like from start to beginning, you get the sense of, you know, of what he's trying to accomplish as a, I don't know if you want to call him like an anti-hero or a, I don't know, a thief.
The guy that's just trying to get by.
Yeah, like you don't even know what to call him necessarily. Yeah, and so, you know, the way that they kind of crafted Tom Holland's villains, it's been interesting and how that's building up because everyone's going to the raft. The raft is essentially a floating prison in the Marvel universe. And so, you know, as far as we know now, the villains in the raft are not only Vulture and Scorpion and I believe Rhino. Rhino? Maybe he is. I don't know. But also
Zemo.
Baron Zemo's there now too.
Spoiler if you haven't watched the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. And so all of these villains are going there. And of course, our friend Michael Morbius, I believe, is also there in his film. And so, and Michael Keaton crosses over there. So this is all kind of lining up to some craziness, which brings it back to the Sinister Six movie I mentioned before that I probably know more about than I should. We're not going to talk about that today, but you know, it's very interesting. And what part is Tom Holland as Peter Parker going to play in that? Is Peter Parker even going to be a factor in that film, or is it really going to be a Suicide Squad type of thing where they're just going to go crazy and, you know?
I mean, every hero always like tries to face like their most like powerful opponent, and I'm pretty sure Peter Parker's foe has always been like the Sinister Six.
It is, yeah, exactly. So, and Spidey's Rogues Gallery in particular is so iconic in that, you know, you Google Spider-Man villains and there's always the Sinister Six in general. And depending on the roster changes a little. Yeah. But it's always these main, you know, villains. And we see this in the Spider-Man PS4 game.
Yes, I was going to bring it back to there. They did it amazing in that,
it was incredible, game too. Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved that storyline.
You literally have to fight all 6 of them. And it's like, it's so tough.
Who was it created by? Doc Ock.
And Doc Ock.
His mentor in the game.
Exactly.
And I was just like, this is
it was incredible. It was so incredible. And so that would be like, honestly, like there were some parts of that particular Peter Parker where I was kind of like, oh, like the Aunt May thing was very strange to me. And there were some things that I didn't particularly love about Sony's Marvel's Spider-Man in PS4. But, you know, that part and how they pulled all of that together was like, oh man, could you imagine seeing that on screen? Like an actual, like, as MCU canon? Yeah. That would be phenomenal to me.
Like just like Spider-Man fighting 6 of these guys.
Exactly. And so, gosh, I mean, I don't know. Do you have a favorite from each trilogy at all? I mean, aside Amazing Spider-Man.
Like a favorite?
A favorite film from Tobey and a favorite film from Tom?
Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock.
Yeah.
I think
you just can't.
Yeah.
I have one thing about that film because I'm that person. there's this one, and this is strictly from a visual standpoint. You know, there's that scene where, you know, the fire's happening and he's saving MJ, and then his mask is off, like half, and he turns around. Yeah. They did the old switcheroo where they flipped the frame.
Of course they did.
And so like in one scene, because Tobey has this like little hook thing, I think, under his eye. I forgot what it is. He has like a mark on his face, and it's consistent throughout the whole entire film. And then that one scene, they flipped it, and I was like, oh.
Of course.
And so, and it's such an important moment to me. I was like, You couldn't
and
just.
you just noticed it, yeah.
And it's strictly for visual perspective, but I was like, oh,
Like, come
so I
on.
see it. It's like the Tony Stark glasses in Infinity War.
Yeah,
Man.
That's the thing. Most people are not going to notice
Nope,
that.
yeah, exactly. And
only
so
the
coming-
1%, and you are the 1% guy.
God, coming from that world of editing is like,
Yeah, I know.
man.
And then when it comes to Tom Holland's trilogy,
Yeah.
I mean, I did like Far From Home. I enjoyed it just because his chemistry with Jake Gyllenhaal is amazing.
Mysterio.
I love that.
Mysterio is another one that I didn't think. I was just like, how could they possibly? Because in the books, Mysterio is he is mystical. He's a mystical sort of
Like a
being.
like a magician.
Yes,
sort
he's
of
very
thing.
much a sorcerer sort of thing. And so I was like, are they going to bring magic into this? But then the plot twist,
Which is another great example of going from
Yeah.
comic to like
wow, like
how
who
do you
would've-
bring such a mystical character as like Mysterio? And it's literally the movie answer.
Yeah.
VFX.
VFX?
He's a VFX
The entire
guy.
thing. Yeah, that was a crazy surprise to me, and the fact that they pulled it off is incredible too. And
I thought it worked, and he played a great version of Mysterio.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very cynical.
yeah. Yeah.
Hates Tony Stark. I mean,
There's always a purpose. There's a purpose
Yeah.
for all of it, which is really great. And the way that Tom's Peter kind of grows in that film too is really great.
I think the
'cause-
growth in that movie
Yeah.
is amazing. That last scene of where his Peter Tingle comes back,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he's able to defeat him.
Now, do you think this is another mutant situation where they're not allowed to say spider senses, or do you think they're choosing not to?
Spidey sense?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if they're not able to say it. But
Do you prefer Peter Tingle?
I think it's hilarious. I know some people think it's corny, but I think it's
corny, but
I
it
think
came
it's
from
fun.
Aunt May,
I'm-
so it's okay.
That's why I was like, Aunt May said it, and
Aunt
I
May
was just
said
like,
it.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If Peter was just like, yeah, my Peter Ting, I'm like, okay, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't mean
Exactly.
that. But that scene of he's like where he finally defeats him. He's like,
Yeah.
you can't trick me anymore, Beck. He's like, maybe you do deserve these glasses, and he holds the glasses up
Yeah.
like it's a gun.
Yeah.
But then Peter can like read that it's not, like, because his Spidey sense
Yeah.
kind of kicks in. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this is
Yeah.
great.
Oh
Like
my
this
God.
is just character growth at its
Right.
finest.
Right, for sure. And
but
so
yeah.
where do you think he goes from there? Where do you think he goes in No Way Home?
That's right, because at the end of that movie is when
When he's outed.
crazy.
Outed.
I don't think we've had a Spider movie where his identity is
Nope.
revealed to literally
Not
the world.
to the world, because in again, like in Spider-Man,
Yeah, like people know who he is. Like
People-
his close friend, like
Yeah.
his close
because
family.
yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
He has
'cause-
to.
Yeah, and then in Amazing Spider-Man, Aunt May kind of puts it together. Gwen knows.
Yeah.
Captain Stacy knew. And then you come to Tom, and like that's
No
it's
one knew.
the biggest thing. And
That's the most like
it's
that's
transmitted
the most, like,
everywhere.
worldwide reveal to be like,
Right.
oh no.
And with J. Jonah Jameson's
I
cameo,
mean, that was
holy crap!
amazing in itself.
I stood up and I
Really?
was like, what? because again, like I like to stay pure. And so, but I'm also the person that when these films come out, I am there at the 11 p.m. film showing if I can help it.
Yes.
Because I was also the midnight person when it was a midnight thing. But I'm there like the first
Dude,
showing they have.
now they show like at 10.
Yeah, they
and
do.
I'm like, oh my God.
And I'm like,
okay.
let's go. Okay. So I'm out by the time,
Yeah.
But so I was there that day. And when that dropped, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
my
I was kind of freaked out too because I was just like, is that really?
that was him.
that him?
Yes.
And I like how they
Parker.
and I like how they even kind of transformed his character
Yes.
from the
It's modernized.
because it's like no one reads the paper in that
No.
era anymore. So what
No.
does he do? It's like a video
Vlog.
podcast,
He's a vlog.
like
He's a vlogger.
YouTube video,
Yeah.
kind of, in a way.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they even evolved him,
Which
and
makes
so-
perfect sense because I mean it's nice that you kind of get that sort of progress. You don't
Yeah.
want it to feel so stationary in a particular era.
Much like J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man games where he has a podcast, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
That's great too. That makes
It's
sense.
great
That
update.
makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
it makes perfect sense. And that's why like when people are like, oh, Raimi forever. I'm like, well, okay, but that was
For its time, amazing.
incredible. It was perfection for its time.
Yeah.
And I think that like poor Andrew gets kind of sidelined.
Yeah,
but,
I know, but it's- yeah.
Tom's era is also like a great testament to how it's kind of ushered into a modern scape.
Yeah.
And then to see like their versions of homages and then to have a cameo like J. Jonah Jameson.
Huge.
It's gigantic.
Huge.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how
Well, because they're introducing all these components that are aligning in a way that most of us may not even realize, So we have Sword in place now. Shield is more or less, disassembled. Fury is up in the space station. There's Skrulls and they're trying to work together, but also Skrulls are also invading. And so it's kind of like, holy cow. And so Secret Wars is going to be a thing, which almost immediately means you get the symbiote suit back, you get the Skrulls, you get all these impersonators. You don't know who's who, who's real, who's authentic. And so I'm like, you wrap that up into multiverse talk. I don't know, man. It's like nuts. I don't know.
I don't know what Kevin Feige is thinking, but and then we got Eternals coming,
and then Eternals on top of that. So, and they're another the face Geoffrey makes.
Like,
oh my god,
I don't get it, bro. Like they're going. I didn't know they can get any more cosmic than you can possibly get.
This is the nuts thing. It's because it's so cosmic. You have to think that then directly or indirectly correlates to Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, of course, Eternals, slight touches of Doctor Strange. Multiverse of Madness.
That's gonna,
and then it could inevitably introduce Fantastic Four. Maybe there's some cosmic thing that happens and imbues them with their powers.
This is what I just thought of this right now. I love that this decade of MCU. You know how the first decade it was very grounded, very all on Earth.
Now
with the
they're
exceptions of Guardians and Thor and whatever. But now it's just all cosmic.
Well, because after Thanos, where do you go after
Thanos?
And
you can't stay on Earth.
You ask me, and I'm like. Galactus.
Yeah. So you bring that guy in. You had a touch of that.
He's nomin on Earth.
Like you had a touch of that in the first Guardians when the Collector was explaining.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, why not
with all the Celestials and stuff? Okay, that said, we had a question from the audience.
Let's do it.
If you, I believe this is Andrew, if you could make one Spider-Man movie, what storyline would you choose? And I don't know that you know enough about Spider-Man to...
Probably don't. But that's a more you question.
That's a tough question. That's a really tough question. And I kind of said this in the Iron Man episode. And I would like to see, just because I'm destructive like that, I would like to see Superior Spider-Man.
I was gonna like the dark,
because it's so off the wall, like nutso
just
cuckoo.
Visually, it's just off the wall.
It's just nutso because I don't know how much you know about this, but it's essentially like Doc Ock is dying in the main world.
Okay.
And he's on his last breath. He's hooked up to machines. He's like nasty, gnarly. He's like losing his hair and he's just dying.
Yeah.
But Peter Parker's standing over his bed and he's like, yeah, this is it. You're finally, he's like I've been tortured for years.
Yes.
And Homeboy's like, haha, I switched our bodies. And he switches bodies with Peter Parker. I can't tell you how. You have to read it. So essentially,
whoa, that's dark.
Doc Ock, and it's funny because you come from this standpoint of like Green Goblin and Spider-Man. They're the arch enemies, but the more you think about it, and with like Spider-Man 2 in mind, Doc Ock is actually pretty close.
Yeah,
because he's really messed with him.
I also got that from the PS4 game,
and he also dated Aunt May in the books, or he almost married her, or did marry her. I can't remember, but. So he's really ingrained in this character. Like he's really like they're all intertwined. And so they switch his bodies. And so Peter Parker dies. He dies. And so I believe Dan did this storyline. Dan got so much flack for killing Spider-Man that people still haven't recovered, even though Peter Parker is all well and fine. Dark. It's very dark. Yeah, it's incredibly dark. And so Doc Ock runs around
as Spider-Man
in his body in an athletic handsome,
a young body,
dashing body, and he's got the intellect of a crazy man. So he's Peter Parker, but completely like
off the rails.
Yeah. And so he creates the suit that is essentially the Spider-Man suit, but he's got the arms that are like his.
Wow, it's kind of like
his octopus
kind of like the
tendrils.
It's almost like the suit in Endgame or something.
Yes, it is it's very similar to the Iron Spider. It's very similar to Iron Spider, which came from the Civil War arc in the books, which is very different, by the way. It's a whole other escapade. But yeah, he made the suit and it's pretty dope. It's like red and black. instead of red and blue,
And white or
and his
whatever.
lenses are dark, and it's not such a departure that it looks cheesy, but it's just sleek enough that you're like, dang, he looks good.
Damn.
And so there's this entire storyline with Superior Spider-Man, and he looks like Peter Parker, he sounds like Peter Parker, but he doesn't speak like Peter Parker.
He
speaks like Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that. I
That
don't think it'll
sounds
ever
very-
happen. Could you imagine?
That would be a very, very jarring visually.
Yeah.
Like now I'm just imagining, like, let's say it's Alfred Molina.
Yeah.
Switching
Can
with,
you
with
imagine?
either Tom Holland or whatever.
Could you imagine Tom Holland impersonating Alfred Molina's Doc Ock? Like that's what you would be
That's
getting.
an acting challenge if it
Like,
if
let me
that's
just
not
say,
one.
like to kind of like summarize what happens, or at least give you an example of
Yeah.
like the kind of spider he was.
Yeah.
He sees Black Cat on a rooftop doing her thing. She's stealing something. Doc Ock like sees her and she's like, "Oh, hey, Spider," thinking it's Spider-Man. He clocks her right in the face.
Jesus.
Two of her teeth pop out, and she's like, "What the?" And it's because it's Doc Ock.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't care for you. You're simpleton." Like
Oh my God.
It's pretty savage, and so I'll never get to see it. So that's why I'm choosing that. So thank you, Andrew, for that question.
Wow, that was really,
Yep.
really dark, but I love it.
Yeah. I mean, there's some other storylines, of course, that are like, there's this, there was this one in 2006 called The Rain arc. And MJ dies
Oh God.
from radioactive poisoning
No.
because of Peter.
Oh my God.
You can understand why. I'm sure.
It's so dark. You like all the dark sides of
Because
the comics.
it's so different. It's so different.
Because you're never going to see that live
Never
action,
going to see
ever.
it. Never going to see
The
it.
studio
So,
would never allow
yeah,
that.
no, exactly. And then there is this. I would kind of love to see a series based on this. So back in the day, there was a 4, 5, or 6 issue series written by the incredible Mark Millar and penned by Terry Dodson, who I love. He's one of my other favorite artists. And it was called Trouble.
Okay.
And so it's essentially a prequel of sorts where it shows, because ironically, the only movie you even get to hear about Peter's parents is Amazing Spider-Man, where they kind of did that whole segue that they were like they were on a secret mission and he had to go into the subway and he found his dad, like that whole very strange side story. So Peter's parents are actually, it's kind of their origin story, and it has Aunt May and Uncle Ben in it. And they're young. They're basically young. And the funny thing is that young Aunt May looks like Gwen Stacy.
Oh.
And young, I could be getting this backwards, and young Mary, who is Peter's mother, looks like MJ.
Oh my God.
It explains a lot. It's kind of messed up.
Oh wow.
But the whole premise, and I believe this has been retconned because it's so crazy.
Over the top, yeah.
So they kind of go on this double date, and I mean, long story short, Aunt May gets pregnant.
Holy jeez.
And so it completely domino affected that timeline, because that meant that all along, Aunt May is actually Peter Parker's mother.
Instead of my God.
Mary Parker. And so they were like, okay, well, here, you take the baby because you won't get judged for it because you're going to be married. It was kind of one of those situations.
Oh my gosh.
And so it really plot twisted everything. And not many people have read it. People, it was really one of those things where if you just looked at it on a comic book shelf, you were just kind of like, what is that?
Yeah.
Because they used real people on the covers. And so it's like this blonde and a redhead. And I was just, and I had worked at a comic book shop for a very short time in my life. And so when I go into the shop and I kept seeing it, and I was like, I know it's a Spider-Man book. I don't know that I want to pick it up. And I finally picked it up and I was like, huh. It's got chutzpah. And so, so it introduced this theory or not even theory, it introduced the fact that Aunt May is actually Peter's mother. And so when you think of Marissa Tomei and Tom Holland, for instance, you're like, whoa, could that have been?
That would be, wow.
Right? And so they've kind of retconned that whole situation.
Who knows
it's
where
not
that goes.
true, quote unquote, anymore. It was just kind of a fun story, but that would have been an interesting one too.
I mean, you never know.
Yeah. How about another pop quiz?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I feel like we talked. I just want to let you know we are at almost 2 hours.
Oh, shit. Okay.
All right.
In general, Do you like burgers?
Of course.
What is your staple burger if you were to pick one?
Oh God, okay. I've been really into like smash burgers lately.
Really?
So like super simple,
Yeah.
just like a nice crunchy on the side
Yeah.
of the patty with like 2 slices of cheese.
Jeffrey's going in deep here. I was just asking per franchise, but he's like, no,
with a nice bun
details.
buttered up with some aioli, and some white
You
onions.
fancy
Yeah. All right, here we go.
aioli. Okay, but do you have a favorite? Like, are you a Five Guys guy? Are you a Shake Shack guy? Are you a Burger King?
I love a solid In-N-Out burger.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So in the books, Hawkeye and Spidey constantly talking about burgers and which one is better.
Amazing.
Constantly.
All right.
And so between In-N-Out and Five Guys,
Okay.
which team is Spidey on?
Oh, this is like is this a legit like
It's a real question.
Like-
It's a real thing.
a real
Yes.
argument in the comics?
Yes, absolutely.
Between In-N-Out and
Five Guys, yeah.
Whoa.
They fight about it all
That's
the time.
very current.
All the time.
It's very like relevant.
No, I love it.
Okay. So Hawkeye and Spidey.
Yeah. If they're having a conversation and Hawkeye's like, man, I don't know how you like those burgers and those fries. Like, who is Spidey fighting for?
I want to say that Hawkeye is giving Spidey crap for liking Five Guys burgers.
Okay.
I think.
You think that's it?
I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Because
I have a very fixated. Opinion on In-N-Out burgers compared to Five Guys burgers.
Okay.
So I feel like Hawkeye would say, I feel like I'd be like me and Hawkeye would be telling like, how could you like Five Guys burger?
Yeah. Well, you would be correct.
Yes.
So
Shout out Jeremy Renner. Let's go, baby.
Hawkeye is very much an In-N-Out fan.
Yes, because it's very simple. It's
Simple,
very,
straight to the
just
point.
All American, just very
Yeah. And then Spidey loves his Five Guys.
Because
so
all
they
the customization
they banter.
and all that
Yeah,
stuff,
they
yes.
banter all the time.
Oh, they're talking about In-N-Out and Five Guys in the comics?
Yeah.
Damn, that's amazing.
Okay.
Yes, because I've also had some people that are saying like, I don't understand the hype of In-N-Out. I'm like,
Dude, they're all good.
and I was like, it's
I like
not
them
it's
all.
not that it's the hype. It's just when you want just a nice all around burger,
Yeah.
like with the most simplest of items on it. You can't. There's a reason you can't customize there.
Yeah.
That's
Secret
what
menu,
you go
baby.
to, and it's cheap. It's literally
It's cheap.
$3.
Yeah.
For $3-4
You're
for
right.
a burger.
Absolutely right.
So that was my thinking. I was just like, Hawkeye's literally telling like Spidey,
Yeah.
why would you? Why, there's so much going on.
I'm gonna send you the panels. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh. I would. That's the kind of that's an exchange I'd like to see. You know what I mean? Like, I love how Tom kind of like he unfurls these like lines that are very pop culture referencey, and he says these things that.
Speaking of exchanges, I do hope we see that Falcon and Spider-Man exchange of like where I think Captain America Falcon is holding Spidey by the legs. Like, hey, so can I hold the shield? No. Well, Steve let me. No.
Oh God.
So Captain America, Spidey, or Falcon, Spidey
so cute.
exchange would be great, and it'll be
Especially
even
with
better
Sam.
because
Yeah.
Anthony Mackie hates Tom Holland anyway. So
Quote unquote hates.
Yeah.
He secretly loves him. Okay, so we had a comment from Ed Ninja on Instagram.
ooh,
Quote unquote. This is from TikTok. So if we have the soundbite, maybe we'll just drop that in.
oh wow,
A healthy reminder. This walked. She strutted that runway, mama, so that Peppa could run.
Okay, with that in mind, if not Tom, if not Tobey, if not Andrew, who would you have picked as to be your Spider-Man?
this is another one of those questions. Okay, see now this is different than the Iron Man question that we had because we've had so many different iterations of Spider-Man. We can have this conversation of who else can we?
Yeah.
Well, this isn't who I would choose, but I know he was this guy in the running before along with Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Timothy Chalamet, yeah.
And I see it, but I don't. I see him as the Peter Parker side. I don't see him as a superhero. Spider-Man. Sorry, Timothy. You're a great actor, though. But
He's a wonderful actor. Not for me.
like as of right now, who else? At least a young actor. I don't know that many young actors also.
I honestly, I don't know if it's I'm ill prepared or I'm just so invested. I can't think of anybody.
That's true. I
don't know
Tom
that I
Holland
can
has
think
really
about
knocked it out the park as
Oh, he's so good. And and for me, at least, I didn't watch his films before Spider-Man until after Spider-Man, but he came out of nowhere for me.
Same.
He came out of nowhere, and I was like,
think
"Whoa,
he came out of
who's
nowhere
this
for
kid?"
a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and so like that said, I just feel like if there was to be one that I could choose, I just don't know where he is right now.
Yeah.
Have you seen the prospects that were originally?
I just know of Timothy Chalamet.
Shyamalan.
Yeah. Do you know who else?
Well, I only have the roster from Raimi's Spider-Man. So first and foremost, it was almost directed by James Cameron.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, it was almost a James Cameron movie, and I believe this was supposed to be after Titanic. So, of course, his choice was Leo DiCaprio. That silence spoke volumes. Yeah, that was just not going to happen. I could understand why, and it's a whole thing with
He's an amazing actor though.
With a lot of and it's tandem with being an it girl or an it guy.
Yeah, you just can't put the biggest star in a role that you
immediately get.
It's like putting
the
Nicolas
studios
Cage
are like
on anything,
right? But the studios look at these stars that are hot and they're like, where can we put them?
Yes.
And so sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And so thankfully it didn't, because Spidey could have been Leo DiCaprio instead of Tobey Maguire, which is funny because they're best friends in real life.
And they were in The Great Gatsby together too.
Yes,
which is
they
also
were.
Great
Yeah,
movie. You guys should watch that.
Another possibly could have been Spider-Man was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Why?
That's gotta be like you have your list,
you
you have your bottom list, you have your 6 feet under,
and off the
then
heels
it's Arnold
of like,
Schwarzenegger.
and that's like off the heels of like T2 and I don't know what other films he was doing at that time.
Yeah, it doesn't no.
And then of course our good friend Tom Cruise.
Maybe you can hire the kid in Terminator.
Oh, I know, yeah. Tom Cruise is another.
What? Sorry, I can't.
Tom Cruise again strikes again. He's basically
I get it for
every
that
character.
time, but Tom Cruise looks like he's 40 no matter what.
He looks like he's been the same age for 9 decades.
Which is not a bad thing at all.
No, it's great, but he's not a Peter. He's again, we kind of said it in the Iron Man episode. He's kind of an Iron Man. If he was going to be anybody, he's kind of the Iron Man.
Yes, 100%.
Young Tom Cruise, even I'm kind of like, I don't
not
see
even
it.
Top Gun Tom Cruise can make that.
And then I also have Jake Gyllenhaal. Ironically enough,
funny
because back in the Raimi days,
I was like
he and Tobey,
Donnie Darko type days,
yeah,
right?
He and Tobey got compared to very often, and they were kind of like two sides of the same coin, And so there's a picture of Jake Gyllenhaal at one point before, way back when that was all happening, and he was dating Kirsten Dunst before Tobey.
I just saw pictures.
And there's
of
a picture of him
for some reason. It's so
probably
weird.
because Spider-Man Day.
Yeah.
There's a picture of Jake doing the hand thing, and he's like making this face, and he's pointing at it like, "Yeah, should have been me." And it's the funniest thing because no one seems to remember it, but it exists. Charlie Sheen is another guy. Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
For that time.
For the time, yeah. We're talking late 90s here again, like late 90s, barely crossing over.
He was pretty young. I remember because one of my favorite movies from him is Wild Thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
This one's going to stun you and maybe many people, but once upon a time, Michael Jackson tried to buy Marvel's just so he could play Spider-Man.
Yes, you told me this,
yes.
right? Yes.
And that is very strange all around.
Oh, yeah, we texted about this. Yes, you texted me about this, I think.
So strange. Yeah, I
imagine being that desperate.
Imagine having that much money.
Correction.
Like,
yeah. Imagine being that rich and be like, I want to buy this IP just so I can.
Can you imagine? And then in true eBay form, Sony bid $1 higher and immediately got it. And Michael J was like, oh, So there's that. And so we have a comment from Instagram from Ariel.
Ooh.
We asked people, which team were they on, and she so graciously answered, Team Tom. He's a sweet baby angel who must be protected.
That is very true.
And
I do agree with
we
that.
tagged Tom Holland for commentary. He sadly did not respond. But yeah, no, and I couldn't pick one. Could you pick one? You could pick one. You could pick Tobey.
Tobey.
Yeah, you picked one.
It has to
I
be.
can't pick one.
I mean, I do like Tom Holland because he's literally playing the epitome of Peter Parker
Yeah.
as a teenager
Yeah.
at 16 or whatever.
Exactly.
But Tobey is just
The man. Now, would you? That was pretty good. So, question for you, and I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. In fact, would you rather have Tobey exist in Spider-Man 3 as well as Multiverse of Madness? Would you rather have a Spider-Man 4 directed by Sam Raimi with mostly the same team, or would you rather have a TV show that explores that Spider-Man's universe?
explores Tom Holland's universe?
No.
Or just
Tobey Maguire.
Okay. Oh, so have
Like-
Sam Raimi direct Spider-Man 4 after Venom or
Yes.
whatever.
And kind of almost maybe give it a Peter B. Parker treatment.
Give it like a
Yeah.
Just give it like a kind of closure a little bit, I guess. Would it be a Disney Plus
Sure.
MCU series?
Let's say it's maybe in an alternate universe, maybe this is why Sony was like, sure, because we're going to do a Spider-Man show.
With how these Disney Plus MCU shows have panned out,
Yeah.
I would love to see an episodic kind of
Version
of
because
Spider-Man.
I feel like
because we've only gotten him in these movies.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we had the animated series, but like we've only gotten like him live action in these movies. You know,
yeah.
And I love what the Disney Plus shows have done with really fleshing out these characters and making us kind of understand and care about them. So seeing that
Yeah.
with Spider-Man, who's a very titular character, like, you know, I think that would be very amazing to see.
Yeah.
But having all three Spider-Man in one movie,
I mean, if I had to pick, honestly, it's a tough decision. I mean,
It is.
I can honestly say though, I would automatically take out Spider-Man 4. I'm not interested.
Okay.
I would rather, because of what Spider-Man 3 did. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I really get it.
Yeah.
I don't see the allure personally. I would rather have an alternate universe story or show where he could get 4 hours, 6 hours of
exactly.
instead.
That's exactly.
And they fix things.
Sure.
Or what I think is going to happen is the three Spider-Men in Spider-Man 3 and then the multiverse.
I still don't want to believe that's going to happen.
I know.
Because it's too good to be
It's
true.
too good to be true.
But it's also very possible because of Kevin Feige.
Yes.
And like how he's running things.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, okay, kind of going back to the Spider-Verse idea and how there's multiple Spider-Men and Peter Parkers in general, Tobey and Andrew both exist in the comic books as Spider-Man. Their Spider-Man exist in the
really?
comic books. And they were in panels during Spider-Verse as a storyline.
That's amazing.
And they reference them like I can't remember if they called them by name, but they're talking in dialogue with the primary Spider-Man and they're off camera. And I think
That's funny.
I want to say they got killed. I'm not sure.
Damn.
But they're in there, which is hilarious to me because I was like, so they've been on screen together in some capacity.
Sure.
So to bring it, to full fruition is kind of like, whoa.
And then also like with Alfred Molina basically confirming
Yeah.
that he's gonna be in this upcoming, and it's like,
That's
okay,
it's gonna
well,
be
what does
cool.
that mean for everybody else?
Yeah, no, it's going to be very interesting.
I just want to give props to Marvel for keeping everything under wraps like this.
Dude, I know. I'm just waiting for Holland to spill.
I think he's learned his lesson. I think
know,
he's
I
learned
think
his
this
lesson.
one-
All those times with Benedict Cumberbatch
Yeah.
and those press tours, I think he's learned his lesson.
And so with the latest Ms. Marvel kind of leak, I think we can anticipate to at least see in the next month or two
'Cause that
the
comes out
Eternals.
this
Yeah,
year.
it comes out this year. I think we can expect to see the Eternals trailer very soon. Then almost immediately after.
no one's even ready. Oh
Yeah,
my
after
God.
Loki. I think after Loki and with Black Widow, we'll see Hawkeye or Ms. Marvel, if not both. And then by the time it's fall, like September, we're going to get that trailer for Spider-Man. And that's when the real game starts.
That's when all
Woo!
the theories are gonna
all the theories are going
hit.
to start popping out. Yeah, they're all going to surface. Is Daredevil in it or not? Please give me Charlie Cox back.
if I do see
Yeah.
Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield,
Oh
and
my God.
Tobey Maguire in one frame,
Yeah.
in one scene,
Yes.
in this upcoming Spider-Man
Yep.
movie, I will do something, whatever you guys like. I will.
You know what? I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something that I did with J. Jonah Jameson. I'm going to get up out of my seat, but I'm going to Price is Right it down the aisle and around the theater cheering.
I think I will very like loudly exclaim in the theater. I'll be like, "Are you kidding me? No way this is happening right now."
I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Like, because I remember even during like, I don't know if it was Infinity War or Endgame.
Yeah.
I definitely like blurted out stuff. And I was just like,
no, for sure.
Are you kidding? What?
Yes. No. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah. So if I see that, if any of us see that.
Oh, it's going to be incredible.
I think it's just
imagine?
I think it's just going to be like, I can't believe we're here.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Yeah. It's another one of those things where I'm just like, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime, but we'll see. We'll see. So we hadn't picked our next character subject yet.
For the next episode?
For the next episode, but
Ooh.
I had an idea.
Ooh.
I had an idea.
Dai has ideas. She has the best ideas.
So
guys. She's literally carrying the show.
my cute, I have my cute Marvel food bowl from Lunchbox.
It's actually really cool.
Isn't it cool? It's a ramen bowl.
It's a ramen bowl?
It's a ramen bowl. It's got a hole for the chopsticks. Yeah. Lunchbox.
Dude, you have all the cool stuff. Holy hell.
Right? It's cool. And I have like the matching apron.
Yeah. Of course.
And so I have put folded papers in this little bowl here.
Okay.
And so you're gonna pick 4.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have those 4 on social media. And people are going to vote
choose which
for
one,
us.
For us, which one the next episode's going to be.
Who the next episode is.
Oof.
I mean, maybe it's too soon to be doing this kind of trust fall.
Hey, I'll take it.
So here we go. So I just put.
So I just choose 4. I choose 4.
You choose 4, and we name them out as okay. You pick one, you name it.
All right.
So this is completely random. He has no idea I did this to him. I swear to gosh.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on right now, to be honest with you.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Pick.
I'm picking
First pick. First option.
Pick. The first option is none other than Daredevil himself. All
Okay.
Right,
Daredevil is option 1.
That will be fun.
Cool.
All right. The second option will be Cap.
Dun 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 dun.
That'll be there.
Captain America.
I have so many.
Love.
Especially now we have 2 Captain Americas.
Yes, this is true. But no, that would be Steve Rogers for that one. Or we could change it up. We could segue it. I don't know. Maybe people want Sam Wilson. We'll see.
Oh, dealer's choice.
Oh, so you can suggest one.
Oh.
The power is yours.
Okay. So I think for one other option, I think I want to do Wanda.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Wanda.
After watching the show,
Wanda
I really want to delve deep into her kind of psyche and everything.
Cool. And you got one more.
I'm also just very in love with Elizabeth Olsen. So.
Hey, Lizzie, if you're listening.
I know you're in London.
Shout out.
I know you just finished.
Shout out.
I know you just finished filming Doctor Strange 2. And
last but not least,
hot guy.
Hot guy. Yeah, that's my boy. Okay. So 4 possibilities for the next character study on A Stark Contrast. Maybe Daredevil, Matthew Murdock himself, Captain America, whether or not it's Steve Rogers or Sam Wilson, we do not know. We'll figure it out. Hawkeye, other known as Hawkeye, Clint Barton, and dealer's choice. Geoffrey has chosen
Wanda Maximoff.
Wanda Maximoff.
It's so funny when I said Daredevil, I was about to be like Charlie Cox, and I was like, wait, no, that's the actor's name.
So those are going to be our 4 options. If you're still listening after this long journey,
it's exciting.
You get to choose. We might get no votes. We might get 20. I don't know, but we'll see, I guess.
Are we going to do a poll?
We're going to do a poll. We're going to do a poll on Patreon, of course. They get first dibs. We're going to do a poll on Instagram stories and a poll on Twitter and see how that goes. But that said, that is the show. That again, there's so much more to explore. We didn't even get to talk about my favorite Peter Parker, who is Spider-Man Noir.
Oh, I know. We didn't even get to touch on Into the
we
Spider-Verse.
didn't touch on Into the Spider-Verse at all.
I kept making a note too, like, we need to talk about.
Yeah, and there's 3 Peter Parkers in that movie alone, and then of course Peter Porker, who kind of is almost the same thing, but
maybe Into the Spider-Verse can be.
It can be its own.
Episode.
It's gonna be its own. Honestly, there's just too much
because this
there.
episode was already
it's
chunk.
It's a big one.
I know.
But yeah. So thanks for listening.
Anything else to sign off?
Do we
need to make note of anything?
Follow us on social at STRKCNTRST. Search for a Stark Contrast. We show up. We're officially on Apple Podcasts. So you can find us there if you're more of an Apple person. If you like what you hear or you want to support us, please become a Patreon. We have a new tier that's $1. It's called Quantum Mania because it's tiny. And yeah, that's it from us.
Oh man, another episode in the books.
And yes, we did it, bud.
Yeah.
Oh, Spider-Man.
But thank you guys. We appreciate to anyone who's listening. Thank you for all the support. And we will see you in the next one.
Bum, ba, ba, bum.
Bye.
Later.
Whatever life holds in store for me, I will never forget these words. With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.